I want to start off with a part of your Art of Sabbatical Substack piece. And I want to read this to you, and then that'll kick us off. So, you wrote, "The alternative was to listen to my heart and walk down an unknown path. It was about creating space to explore and pursue on my own. It was truly about putting my money where my mouth was and using money to create time for me to explore where my soul was ready to go next. The second choice was about curiosity and belief." Tell me more about your sabbatical.
Yeah, I mean, I think the last 3 to 4 years all tie together in very many ways. And so we can go forward, backwards, approach it linearly, however you want to do it. But I remember this conversation I had probably in 2020 with my old manager at the firm I worked at before the one I left. And I remember telling him when I left, it's like, hey, it just feels like the right time for me to be leaving. I had always maybe felt like I wanted to open my own practice. I didn't quite know why yet. And I think in my mid-20s, I was feeling like, all right, I probably don't have the credibility to be able to do this right now. And I definitely don't have the resources. But I said to him, hey, I need to try something different so that I know in 5 or 10 years that I either want to stick to this new thing or I want to try something new. And the reason I feel like that's relevant is because I felt in that moment in 2020, like I would know like when that moment was that I was ready to kind of launch my own practice and do my own thing. And I don't think that ever happened logically, right? I think what I was met with was this feeling of like, I feel very unsettled. I don't feel like I'm in the right place. I don't feel like I'm doing quite the right work that I'm supposed to be doing. And that like voice just sits and bubbles for a while, and you look at your finances, you look at how much your resume, and you kind of think like, do I have the credibility? Do I have the resources to be able to take this leap? And I couldn't answer either of those questions logically. It was just I had to sort of follow what my heart was telling me, which was to walk this path toward building my own firm. And I think a big part of the sabbatical for me was I needed to take a step back in my life to understand what was really important to me and why. Because if I didn't, I think there was a function of I'm just going to replicate the same thing with my own name on the door now. I had working habits I think are good habits, right? But I also think that they were destructive in some other ways too. And so to me, the sabbatical was I have to extract myself from what I know I can do well to sit in uncertainty for 3 to 6 months, make myself feel a little bit uncomfortable, use my money for the first time to really support things I care about, which doesn't feel easy to me, by the way, and just see what happens at the end of that. Right. And so I think that was there, to sum it up, it felt like a moment where I tried to really let go. Right. And so I think the sabbatical for me was I'm a number cruncher. I work in financial planning. I like predictability as much as the next person, and this was I'm going to look at these numbers until I'm blue in the face. And I don't know if I'm going to find what I'm looking for there. I just have to jump off and see what happens next. And I think that's what the sabbatical represented to me was, I have to try to do something different. I have to try and live life in a different way. I have to try and just see where my energy and my time takes me, because right now I just feel like I'm swimming, or up Schitt's Creek without a paddle to some extent.
So much of this is feeling. And what I want to try to see is if you can describe or remember, but you said something that I love. You had to listen to your heart. And you were saying, basically you're saying like you were called to start your own firm, but also called to the sabbatical. Like, how did you know it was something that you needed to pursue versus just this idea that you had? Like, how did you know you had to do this versus, this is an idea I have?
Yeah. Or even, just take a 2-week vacation and sort of hit the reset button. Right.
Right.
I think part of it was experimentation. I mean, I think I knew probably a year before I left that job that voice was starting to take up more brain space, more time in the evenings. I was thinking about it. I was starting to put that idea out into the world a little bit more. But I think part of that too was it wasn't when I leave my job, I will have the opportunity to do X, Y, and Z, right? I think that's a little bit of destructive thinking, and to some extent, it's I don't have, so when I have, I will be. And so I think during this year of like, okay, like this is how I'm starting to feel. I can kind of feel like the it's hard to explain, right? That energy that you feel to do certain things. It's like, okay. What's one thing I definitely wanted to do during this time off? Well, I wanted to travel. Well, I'm not just going to like take I did end up taking 3 weeks and spent it in another country, which was awesome. But I don't think I could have done that without, doing some of the activities while I was still employed to make that feel less daunting. And so, the more I tried some of these activities, so, I went to London by myself. That was the first time I had traveled alone. That was when I went and did the Kinder RLP up in Milton Keys, and was there for a week. I kind of did some other things, some activities outdoors. I started to pick up my running and exercise cadence, right? And all of this was in an effort to like, okay, I'm going to put myself in the best position that when I am ready to pull the trigger, I have a good system around me, that it's not, my entire life falls apart the next day because I don't know what to do with myself. And so it's like, try these little experiments. It's like, okay, I actually enjoy traveling alone. Okay, like I actually like am enjoying running. Like, okay, I'm actually enjoying, cooking some meals, and more time will help me do more of those activities. But I was really trying to get over I can't do any of that until I have the time to do it, because I think that when you're left with, on day one of your sabbatical, with nothing on your calendar, it's really hard to fill that and be someone else that you haven't been. And so I think it's kind of that like practice, warm the water a little bit, feel like, get some feeling feedback in terms of like, okay, I'm like, I enjoy this. I can do more of that. I think this is what's going to help me get closer to who I want to be. But it doesn't have to be perfect either. And so it's just, I think it's just, it was having some thoughts of what do I think living my most authentic or best life looks like. And just for as many of those things, just saying like, yep, I'm going to do that this year, and see what happens. Right. And some of those things, it's like, okay, like I actually don't care about, I don't know, I can't really think of something that's super relevant in this case, but I had lots of plans to do all sorts of things, and I didn't because maybe it wasn't that important to me at the end of the day. But I think because I had put a lot of that structure in place, because I had tried and experimented while I was still employed, it made that period of uncertainty maybe a little bit less uncertain.
It's kind of like exercises those of us that have worked with retirees have probably had our clients do, is like practice being retired.
Yeah.
So, I've had clients even, okay, this is what you say you need in retirement to live off of. Let's live off of that. Even while you're working, even though you're making more, let's see if life really fits within this budget you think you're going to use or not. Or, oh, you say you want to move to Florida and, pick up and sell and move to Florida. Why don't you take a month, go live down there, see if you actually like it or if you just like the idea of it.
Yeah.
So that way when the time really comes, you really know if it's something you should do. And the nice thing is most things, whether it's sabbatical or retirement, like if you guess wrong and it's not what you like, you can reverse it back out. Like there might be some wasted cost, but I don't view it as a wasted cost because there's value in knowing that this thing that you thought you wanted isn't what you wanted. So maybe you lose a little bit of money on a move back. Maybe you don't make as much money on the house you purchased, wherever it might be, or whatever it might be. Like, okay, there is a little bit of consequence, but it's probably not going to be a consequence that dramatically changes your life. And at least now you know, and there will be less regret later on when you're on your deathbed and say, oh, I wish I would have taken that sabbatical. I didn't do it because of X, Y, and Z. Like now you don't have that regret.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference there is, especially for younger people, right? Like you may have some resources, I don't think we're doing the same analysis of do you have, financial independence yet for most people that I'm working with, but that doesn't mean sabbatical should be off the table. And in some ways, I think it's equally as important. It's just harder to solve from a math standpoint because you don't know what's on the other side, right? And so, for retirees, they've worked their entire career, and the other side is like eternal sabbatical until they die.
But there's still unknown on that other side. I think it's not that different than the sabbatical unknown. Because like, yes, we can run the numbers and we can say we have enough money, but things can happen. And on the unknown, even in retirement, it could not work out. Yeah. I think the biggest thing is, go ahead.
I was going to say the money thing is a big permission piece, right? And so, maybe we're going to say the same thing there. And so to feel like, all right, well, I don't have financial independence, right? Like, am I being irresponsible by taking this time off? I don't know what my return on investment is going to be because I don't know what activities I'm going to be enjoying most. And yet, a year later with the ability to look back in hindsight, things did not go according to plan, but it was close enough to what I had originally mentally modeled, even financially, that it's like, okay, like, what is not captured here is just I had to experience life and to live it and to figure out what it is I value and what it is I don't. Because I think for that 10-year period preceding that, what I put a lot of my time and energy into for like, which I'm very grateful for, was work, right? And I think to be able to pick my head up and just ask myself a question again of, okay, I've been working really hard to get to this point, to become a lead advisor in my career, to move back to Seattle, to do all these things. And I sort of expected this like euphoric moment to happen. It's like, you did it, you got to that point. And then it was just like, okay, well, like now you got 25 more years of this. And it's like, well, shoot. And I sort of had lost track of who the rest of me was. And I think that's because I care very deeply about the work that I do. And that's a blessing and a curse in some ways. But I needed to reestablish and rethink about what those other pillars, like what other pillars of my life, like what that could look like, and what my hard work was supporting outside of that work, because it was only draining, right? The more energy I put into it, and I gave a lot, and I had great relationships with clients, but I think there was like, I need to find well-roundedness in this time, and I need to find what drives me, and I need to find what's going to allow me the space to actually spend money that I tell clients that they should be doing too, right? And so why am I blocked from making that choice myself? And I just need to, again, like I just need to be in that space to find out.
Well, the reason I'm glad you wrote this, and it's called The Art of the Sabbatical. It's on Michael's Substack, which I think if you're not subscribed to the Substack, it's one of my favorite ones. Like, Michael has kind of become, because Morgan Housel's not writing as many blog posts as he used to now that he's got his books and everything. So like whenever Morgan wrote, I would always read it. And then that would always be the first blog I would share whenever I curate. So whenever Michael's comes out, it's the first blog post I share with my clients, because that's the only place I curate nowadays. So I highly recommend it. But back to my point, I'm glad you wrote this, because I think one of the things that we talked about, financial security and independence and the unknown, is why people don't take these sabbaticals. I think we need to change our conversations about financial planning with young professionals. Like, and I've written about this and I've talked about it before. I haven't spent a lot of time about it, but like, telling a 25-year-old you should save for retirement is not exciting. Like, it's just so far away. It's not exciting. I think if we tell a 25-year-old, hey, set aside some money for the long term for retirement, get your company matched, max out your Roth IRA if you can, like save for 65-year-old you, but you might want to evaluate saving and investing for 40-year-old you, or 35 to 40-year-old you, like somewhere in the middle, so that you have the ability, whether it be to take a sabbatical or to do a career change, because what I'm seeing in my work and what I've experienced is there's something magical about that 40-year-old age. And Carl Jung talked about it. We don't start living until we're 40. That is when a lot of people go through, I call it a midlife awakening. Midlife crisis is what we hear it, because we like to be negative and dramatic about things.
Sure do.
But it's like when you get to that age, and you got to experience this a little early, which makes me jealous of you, because now you get more time, living your authentic life. But you've lived enough to experience what you like and you don't like. You've had enough, interactions with the business world and corporate world and all these other things to see how things kind of really operate. And then you also get kind of confident in yourself, that you don't worry as much about what other people are doing. So it's like at that age is the perfect time to be able to scale back, which is kind of what I did with my business, is not work as hard so I can be more present as a father. But if I didn't have kids, it'd be a great time to take a year off to just go travel, eat, pray, love type of thing, and then come back with a new sense of focus for the next 20 years of my life. And you're right, finances are a big part of being able to do that. And in your post, you said, you're privileged to be able to do that. And there is a little bit of privilege, but there is also a lot of responsibility and financial savviness to be able to put yourself in position to do it as well. So maybe a little bit of privilege, but also you put yourself in a position to be able to do that as well. So I want to encourage more young people to save and invest for middle of the life. So you can take that sabbatical, you can start that business, you can go pursue your authentic life when you have a better understanding of what it is. And also, I hope that by these conversations, people start to do what you did. They do these things a little bit earlier, because they're reading the signs, they're paying attention, they're listening to their heart and getting connected with their self, so they don't have to wait till they're 40 to kind of go through that time. So I think we need to change the conversation with financial planning and say, hey, save for retirement, compound interest, 30 years, like all that's important, but also save for midlife to have optionality, which may change how much you save, where you save, all those types of things, what your expenses look like.
Yeah.
But I think that this sabbatical idea is really, really, but I also think it's kind of like a skip year, or I forget what they call it. Like, you don't go to college right away after high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, gap year, yeah. And I understand that the gap year, doing that, you break the momentum of schooling, and sometimes you don't go back. And I think maybe for some people that's okay. But again, at 18 years old, 17 years old, you haven't had world experience to really know what you want. So if you took a year off or two, whether it to be go work or to go travel and go experience, meet people, network, all these types of things, and get an understanding of what's out there, and then you go back to school with much more focus, I think college becomes more valuable, and some people realize they don't have to go. So anyways, I think we need to change the narratives a little bit to encourage people to take these types of risks and plan for it and prepare for it so they can do it.
Yeah, one comment, one question, actually, back to you. And the comment's an easier one, because I think that gets into the fear of the unknown, or the fear of failure that I had, right, around taking time off or starting a business. And I think one of the things I initially told myself is, or that fear was, if I fail, I have to go back with my tail between my legs to someone, and someone else gets to say, I told you so, you shouldn't have done it. And I'm stubborn, and that the thought of that just made me not want to do anything different, right? And I think in reality, like, I'm so much better off having taken that time to explore, that if I had to walk back into a job interview at another financial planning firm tomorrow, I would have originally said, is the first question to me going to be, what did you learn from this experience? And, how do we know that you're not just a total failure under the hood? And I think it's like, because I got to go off and try other things, and now I know how important money is. I know how committed I am to this industry, and I know what I want, right? And I think that level of certainty, having spent time in the uncertain, would I think make me a better candidate for that job if I need to go back to it, than someone who's probably spent 3 to 4 years at 2 or 3 different firms, kind of doing the same thing over and over and over again. Maybe that person has progressed more technically than I have over the year or 2 years that I wasn't working, but I think the lived experience of, now I can see the world differently, I have a better attachment to my why, made me, or makes me, a better person. Now, the question I have for you is, I mean, how do we encourage that conversation with young people, right? Because I think when I look at the traditional way of doing things, it can feel a little backwards at times, right? We look at this nice long linear line of net worth going up over time for most people, because you're just saving and you get these nice, annual returns of 7%, right? And it's just this nice chart. And then we get this Monte Carlo percentage, that is very much akin to, did I get an A on this test, a B on this test, a C on this test, and so, like, it's gamified a little bit, but I think what's missing is life in there. It's just, we've created such, we try to create certainty, and I think that's an important part of what we do, but we miss, it becomes very hard to have that conversation about, well, if you do this, like, now you can see the financial trade-off over the next 40 years, which compounded over 40 years is a huge difference. And yet there is no other way to reflect what's on the other side of that choice, and like what learning or growth you get from that, right? And so, I mean, how do we have that conversation?
I mean, we first off just start having the conversation by saying, hey, you can do this.
Yeah.
You can take 6 months off and go travel the world and go pursue your passions and go explore, go connect with yourself, whatever it is. Like, you can do this. That can be a part of your career path. Having a break in your career for 6 months to go find yourself and become a better version of yourself is not going to be frowned upon. And the reality of it is, you probably come back, like you said, a better version of yourself, more connected to yourself, which will make you better and more convicted in whatever it is you decide to do. So I think first off is just giving people permission to want to do that and to explore to do that. And then I think it just becomes conversations about, like, what does money mean to you, and what is your ultimate goal? And, like, so if I take myself for example, when I run our Monte Carlo simulation, and I did this early, I haven't done it recently to see what the gap would be, but had I continued to push growing my firm and maximized revenues and worked more and saved more, like, the only difference is I'm going to die with more money to give my boys. I'm still going to die with plenty of money to give my boys. But do I need to leave, let's just say, $20 million, or do I want to leave $5 million? And knowing that that $15 million gap is, it's a lot of money, but it can't replace what the last 8 years of my life have been. So I think it is, and that's for me. Other people, that $15 million may be more important, and that's totally cool. Like the authentic life, your authentic life is your authentic life. My values don't have to be your values don't have to be mine. No judgment, as long as you know and you understand and you're making the conscious decision based off of your beliefs. And so I think it is the love we have for life planning. It's helping people really connect to what their real values are. What is their true belief behind money? Not the one that they were told or the one they inherited. And if that ends up being their story, then totally cool. But I think most people, when they dive into it, will realize some of the beliefs they've always held don't really align with what they really believe. But they didn't know that they were actually subscribing to somebody else's belief. So I think that that's part of it. I think another part of it, and this is where I talk my book, is I think the reason you had such good success with your sabbatical and everything on the other side of it with Wonderland is you had really good alignment of spirit, mind, and body.
Yeah.
And I do believe that alignment of spirit, mind, and body allows money to take care of itself. So letting people have a little bit of faith that things will work out. It may not work out the way they think it is supposed to be or the way they want it to be, but it will work out and you will be okay. And sometimes maybe the working out means you do have to go back to that corporate job that you didn't want for a while. Sometimes the working out is through this experience, you discover your unique gifts and talents that only you can do, and you figure out a way to provide that value and service to the world, and now you're making more money than you ever could imagine because you found what you're supposed to do. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. My Kendrick Lamar quote, there's beauty in completion and always faith in the unknown. So as you go into this unknown, having faith that you're going to find your way through it and you're going to be better off. And you have to trust it. And I think the more aligned you are and the more connected you are, the closer you are to your authentic self, the more likely that everything is going to work out. So that's where I bring the woo in. Is I think another part of it is helping people align themselves and find out who they really are and find out their unique gifts and talents and encourage them to pull on those threads and allow those to act as their guide. You use your heart. That's a big part of what my belief is. So connecting to how your body's speaking to you and being able to listen to your heart and trusting your intuition, I think that is the guide that allows you to go into these unknowns with the faith and the trust that everything's going to work out. And usually it does. And sometimes you don't realize that it worked out till you get on the other side. Yeah. And then you look at it, man, I could have never imagined it would have played out this way. And it's so much better than what I thought it was supposed to be.
Yeah. And I mean, and you kind of already said this too, but no decision is permanent, right? And so if you could spend a week on sabbatical, doing whatever, or whatever activity that you think is going to make or improve you as a person, and if it sits uncomfortably with you, I mean, I would encourage you to sit uncomfortably with it for a little bit longer, because I think that there's something in that liminal space that exists. But if that's not for you, like you can change your mind and do something else, right? And I think it's like there is beauty in taking action, whether it is reasonable or flawed, because you will learn something. And I think that was your point earlier of, we sort of like think about these decisions as we do this thing, and then in perpetuity, our path is no longer A, it becomes B. Right. And I think in reality it's like there are so many more twists and turns in this road, which we have no idea how they all sort of stack together other than in hindsight. But it doesn't have to be as daunting as like, this has to make sense. Like, it has to make sense for me to take a sabbatical, because mathematically it doesn't. Right. I'm using my money at a young age in my high earning years. Like, it doesn't logically make sense. But I think it's like, okay, I have to sit in that uncertainty. I have to be able to kind of work through this. And if I hate it, I can pivot back to doing what I was doing, and I have more clarity now. And so I'm not sitting at my future job in this case, thinking about, daydreaming, sitting here thinking about, should I have done this? Should I have done this? It's like, I tried it and actually it wasn't for me, and I learned something, right? And so, yeah, it doesn't have to be perfect. It can be very, very, very flawed. You can learn so many valuable lessons from that.
And sometimes I alluded to it earlier, the lesson of learning that that's not for you. Yeah. Like, okay, what's the lesson in that? The lesson is I no longer have to think about that. Yes. I don't have to daydream about what if, and that's energy. So now you're no longer wasting energy on this thing, because now you know, and you can take that energy and apply it to what you now know is more true for you and move forward. So like, there really is a lesson. Sometimes it is you learn a skill, or there's like an actual lesson that you learn. But other times it is, okay, now that I know that's not me, I can dedicate the energy that I was pouring into these other things. And like that was a big part of my journey. Like the different podcasts, the learning to produce music, like all of the things. I learned that that's not it. So now I focus all my energy into the things I know to be most true for me. And one other thing that when you were talking to me, think about is that the authentic life and just life in general, it's an evolution. So like all of this experimentation, all of this growth, like to your point, we can't know what the future holds for us until we have new experiences. And when you experience something new or you meet somebody new and they expose you to something that you didn't even know was possible, now your world changes. Now your possibilities change. Now your goals change. And so like I think it is very good to have a vision of what you want to see happen. But I think you hold on to that vision kind of loosely. Like it's your North Star, you're heading in that direction, but also you're open to whatever happens along the way. And again, going back to that trust of if you meet this person, if this door opens, it was for a reason and you're still moving in the same direction, but maybe your compass was off just a little bit and then you end up where you're really supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can't be too prescriptive, right? I think you have to have the ability to adapt within that time and in that liminal space. And I agree with you. I think it's a function of the analogy I use is, I don't know if you've ever played Zelda or whatnot, but like there's a map, right? And you start in this very defined space on this map, and slowly over the course of the game, like you extend your map because you're exploring new areas, right? And I think it's the same kind of thing. Like you are just trying to find the outer edges of the map and figure out what's a little bit further past that, and now you just have more information.
There's another quote that I marked that I want to hit on real quick because it ties into where we are now. So it was in a little section you called Rethinking Returns. On a spreadsheet, my sabbatical looks like a terrible decision. I have less money invested. I didn't save into a retirement account. I was getting closer to the peak of my earnings potential, and I chose to take a 100% pay cut. My time to financial independence is probably worse, but frankly, and this is the part I love, I was tired of making decisions for a 65-year-old version of me that I don't even know when I was struggling in the present.
Yeah.
And I think that part of it goes back to finding balance. We do need to prepare for 65-year-old. Like we don't want to piss 65-year-old self off. We'd have nothing.
Yeah.
But also there's no guarantee that we get to be 65-year-old self. And if we sacrifice everything for 65-year-old self and life only takes us to 60, like what did we miss out on? What did we not get to do? So it is about finding that balance. That's where I think you and I as advisors, and this is not meant to be a conversation about financial planning, but it ties into it. That's where I do think we have value is to help people find that balance and have those conversations about money and what do you want the future to look like and what are the possibilities. But what's the point of, taking care of 65-year-old you when you're struggling today? I think that's pretty powerful.
Yeah. I don't know if I have a lot to add to that, that quote, just because I think it sits very powerfully, right? And I think that's just a recognition that our current selves deserve the best, because that's going to set our future selves up for success. And I think as a planner, sometimes I can get lost very much in that forward thinking of, if I can save a little bit today, the return is bigger tomorrow because, right? And that I think that got a little too ingrained in my thinking. And I think that's fairly pervasive across our industry. And I would say the clients that we work with, I think some people are great at making these types of decisions. I think the large majority of the population deals with the same fear of uncertainty that you and I have in our own careers, right? Whether it's in financial planning or not. And I think to be sitting with a lot of that feeling of like, I just am not where I'm supposed to be. And I mean, that doesn't feel good, right? We don't need to talk about the status of my health, but I was not my best. I felt very lost in my 30s. And I felt lost despite hitting all of the benchmarks that I think professionally I feel like I was supposed to have hit. And I think I would have looked ahead and said to myself, if I keep doing the same thing, I will have gone through life on autopilot. And that to me was just like then I have to do something different today because I need to know what living feels like. And I don't mean that in a be reckless kind of way, I just think it's like I needed to relearn what was important to me. And that meant using some of what I had saved to figure that out now. And that has only been rocket fuel for future me as well, I think. Could be wrong about all this, but it doesn't feel that way.
I want to go back to, you felt lost despite hitting all the goals you felt you're supposed to be hitting. How did you go back and A, make that connection, but then B, determine what your real metrics were, what your goals were that you really cared about? Because I think a lot of people are pursuing the promotions and the titles and all of these things, and when they get them, they realize it doesn't make them any happier. And it's because they're chasing the wrong goals or wrong definition of success. So how'd you make the connection, and then how did you go back and rewrite your true goals?
Yeah, I'll say this. I mean, I think the voice in my head kept telling me that there must be something wrong with me, right? Because I am hitting all these benchmarks, and it feels like I'm not thrilled with that. I think it's a little bit of that I'll be happy when attitude that maybe is like implied almost in some of the work we do, right? What are your goals? Well, like I want to buy this, or I want to retire at this point, right? And so like, okay, in 10 years you can do that thing. In 10 years or in 5 years you can very safely buy that house. And so I don't know that we're doing this on purpose, but I think it sort of perpetuates that, okay, when you have that thing, you get permission to feel really good. And so, I mean, I remember working with my therapist through this. It's like, he's like, what happens when you become a lead advisor? I'm like, I'm going to feel like I made it. Like I'm going to feel like I belong in the room. I'm going to feel like I've got, the next 20 years to sort of like kick my feet up and feel super good about my career. And I'm just going to get better and better and better at what I do. And that happened. And the next day was the same. And the day after that was the same. And the day after that was the same. Right. And so like that like euphoric moment never really arrived. And I think I had put a lot of, and this is like, I recognize in hindsight that this probably wasn't right, but I put a lot of thought and energy into thinking that was the moment, that was going to unlock all these other things for me. And I think in reality, it's like, okay, that's awesome that I climbed that ladder pretty quickly for a young person in this industry. But the further I got from that day, like the more I realized like that was the wrong, those were the wrong parameters to be looking at. And so it's like, okay, when I have a little bit more money, then maybe, I'll feel more permission to be able to go take time off work or to go on this trip. And it's like, the more money I had in my bank account, the stress does not go down. It feels now harder to make those decisions because you have more skin in the game. And so it's like, I've spent all this time saving more and more money. Now I'm going to use it even more irresponsibly. And so I think it was just time sitting with some of those feelings of like, why? Why do I feel that way? Why did I feel like this was going to be the moment? Okay, well, I thought that I would, feel like all that hard work paid off and, that I would have enough financial resources to be able to do more of what I wanted. Do you feel that way today? No. Why? Well, I have objectively more than I had 3 years ago. I have another title, on my CV. So like, I guess, yeah, like I have made it further. Well, like, why are you unhappy? Well, I haven't been able to write as much, and I keep telling myself that I would like to do that at some point, but I haven't had the time. Why? Because I keep putting all of that time back into work, or whatever it might be. And so I think it was asking myself that why question enough times to really get to fundamentally like, what is it that's missing? And it's clearly not money, and it's clearly not a title. So there's a little bit of a learning lesson I think we all have to go through there, right? We have to sort of feel through that pain. Like I can't tell you, hey, Justin, in 3 years you're going to have this, what did you call it? It's not a crisis. It's a
midlife awakening.
You're not going to have this midlife awakening, right? And it'll be all figured out after that point. I think we have to get to that, and it's not rock bottom, but you have to get to this point where you're like, oof, I actually now understand that the metrics I was using were not the right ones. And so to take a step out of that and to find new metrics is really hard. And I think I struggled with this during my sabbatical. When people would ask you like, oh, what are you doing? I felt uncomfortable, right? Like it's really hard to answer that question when you're not doing anything professionally.
Which is so wild because you should have been bragging.
Yes.
Like, I'm taking 6 months off. It's funny. I was talking to somebody and he was talking about, I think, like bringing his lunch and eating healthy. Oh, it was a client of mine. We were talking about like at the wrestling matches he goes to. I'm like, yeah, isn't it weird that like you're the weird one for eating healthy, or these people giving up alcohol? You're the weird one for not drinking. You're the weird one for giving yourself permission to take time off. Like everybody says they want that, but you're kind of like keeping small about it because it feels uncomfortable.
Totally, totally. And so I think in that moment, it's like, okay, like, because again, why do I feel that way? Because I feel like an unproductive member of society, right? And it's like, well, that's ridiculous. And so it's like, what other things matter to me? Well, I'm like, yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like, I'm eating healthier than I ever have before. I'm enjoying cooking an hour-long meal in the evening, which before felt like a chore because I would go to work, come home, cook, and by the time the kitchen was cleaned up, it was 8 p.m. and time to go to bed, And so it felt like it became an opportunity to look at some of those areas of my life, like not as a checklist of things to do to maintain minimal health, fitness, whatever it might be, but an opportunity to look at that as why are these activities, like, why do I care so much about them, right? And I think it's not to get into perfect shape, or it's not to become like a world famous writer. It's just that I care deeply about doing those things. And so it was like, you know what? Hey, like, what'd you do this week? I did 3 loads of laundry and I like read a book. And that was like incredible, and that, like, I say that still, and I still feel like a little bit of, like, that doesn't feel like enough, but enough for who?
It's one of the things you said earlier that I wanted to bring attention to. I think it's interesting that your default was, I'm hitting these goals, I'm achieving these milestones, and it doesn't excite me. There's something wrong with me. And I just wanted to bring that up because I'm sure there are people who are listening or watching that they're hitting those milestones and stuff, and that they might think there's something wrong with them. No, what's wrong is the goals. You're perfect. Everything with you is right. It's the goals that are wrong. And I just think we default to, this is what I've been told I'm supposed to seek. This is supposed to make me happy. It's not, so I'm messed up. No, the goals are messed up. What society has told you is messed up. So I just wanted to highlight that, because when you said it, like, I really felt like, oh, damn, like, his default was something's wrong with him, when the reality is Michael's perfect. Everything is right with him. It's just the goals. That's where the wrong is.
Yeah, I don't know that I always believe that, but I mean, I think this is true in all domains of life, right? And so, like, if you, and maybe the most relevant context right now is New Year's resolutions. And so I think sometimes when we think about New Year's resolutions, it's okay, who is the future me that I really want to be? I want to be in shape. I want to be eating healthy. I want to be communicating with my family. I want to be close to my friends. And so I'm going to do 12 of these things, 15 of those things. I'm going to work out 4 times a week. And we have never been that person historically. And so we have this vision of our future selves, which I think is awesome. Like, that's what we're talking about in this vision exercise, right? There's this vision of our future selves, and there's the activities that person is doing that you feel in alignment with. But I think life is inevitably messy. And the second that we get off track, it's the resolution falls apart, right? And I think part of this is just, I'm gonna do something a handful of times, and then I'm gonna reevaluate and see how I feel. I mean, 2 years ago, I didn't have a morning stretching routine. I could barely touch my toes, and every time I stood up from my desk, my back hurt. And I say that as like a 33-year-old. Like, that's sad, And so, like, what did I start doing? I just like woke up in the morning, and a couple days a week I would stretch, but there was no prescriptive plan around it. And 2 years later, it is the most concrete part of my morning. I get up and I stretch immediately. And I'm more in alignment with that person, because I didn't hold or grip that version of myself too tightly. I just kind of thought, these are the things that I think this person would be doing. I have a chance to do it today. I have a chance to do it the next day. It's not did I string 10 together in a row? It's just, it's the practice of daily-ish in some ways.
There was a friend of mine gave me a subtle kind of shift to the way of thinking about these things, so New Year's resolutions being it. The way that my mind always used to work was, I need to do these things to become that guy.
Yep.
The shift was, I am already that guy. Like, mentally, I'm there. I'm embodying that person, how he feels and what he looks like and how he moves. Like, I'm already him. Just the physical world hasn't caught up yet. So,
yeah.
what am I doing as that guy? And that's what I do now. And it's the same thing. It's just, for me, whatever reason, looking at it from, I'm pulling from the future rather than I have to do this to get to the future. That was the thing that allowed me to do it. So, like I don't have the six pack yet, but I feel like I do. Like I feel like I do, and I'm acting as if I do, and I'm doing the things that me later on this summer when I'm out at the pool and I'm loving the way I look with my shirt off because I care. Like that it'll be there, but it's the same thing. So for whatever reason, just sharing that of like if the resolution thing of do this to get there doesn't work, think about like I'm already there. Mentally put yourself there, and it's you have to believe that you are that person and embody that, and that if that's who I am, this is how I live, and I'm doing that now. And then the physical world only can become that person in the future. So little reverse angling to see if that helps out.
Yeah, and it goes back to the experimentation thing too, right? Of like, I am not sitting here just telling myself I am gonna be that person. I'm gonna wait for the external world to find the perfect moment to deliver that, in a nice gift wrapped fashion to me. It's all right. Like I don't know how to get there. I'm comfortable dealing with this uncertainty. I have this thought of who I want to be, but I'm not so attached to it that it's going to scare me away from trying, right? And so that's true of fitness. It's true of taking a sabbatical. it's like, again, what is the next step that you can take that is going to give you more information that is going to allow you to move closer to being that person or becoming that person, or maybe living into that person is what you're saying, or you pivot, and that's okay too.
One more thing I wanted to hit on before we kind of bring this conversation. This will not be the last time you're on. You're going to be in the crew rotation.
We could talk all day.
Mention rock bottom.
Yeah.
And so here's a belief I have.
Yeah.
Had you not listened, had you not taken the sabbatical, you would have hit a rock bottom. And I go through this kind of, I'll say guilt. I don't really think guilt is the right emotion, but I look at my journey, and I am incredibly fortunate that I don't feel as if there's ever been a rock bottom. And I don't know if that's because I haven't lived enough, I haven't reached enough, or I've just been lucky enough to listen to my guidance that has allowed me. But I think that the reason we have to hit rock bottom sometimes is because we're missing the lessons to be learned. And my belief is God, the universe, whomever is teaching you these lessons will only get louder and louder until you learn the lesson. Like you have to learn the lesson. So you can learn it in a more subtle way, or if you're stubborn or you're not listening or you're missing, it's just going to get louder and louder. And I don't think louder comes in the form of happiness and joy. Louder comes in suffering and pain and trauma. And once you hit that rock bottom, that's why you have people who are like rise like the phoenix. They have the big meltdown and they shed their ego, they shed themselves, they finally learn and listen, and then they build back up and they're in a much better situation. So I only share that because I want people to pay more attention to the signs. I want people to catch the lessons earlier and see if that doesn't keep them from having a harder fall. Like, it doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. It doesn't mean there's not going to be bumps along the way. There's going to be sadness. There's going to be loss. There's going to be frustration. There's going to be failure. But it doesn't have to be you lose everything. Like, I think you can avoid that. So I just wanted to point that out as well, because I don't think you hit a rock bottom. I mean, it may have felt like it, but I think there was a deeper rock bottom waiting for you had you not listened and acted. Yeah.
It reminds me of a quote that I can't remember who said it, but I reflect on regularly. That's it's not enough to be in the right place at the right time. You have to be the right person at the right place at the right time.
That's good.
And so that to me says, could I have done this 3 years ago and like be feeling all these things I'm feeling now? Like maybe. But I think I had to go through that really emotionally rocky journey to feel like, all right, like there's something that's not working here. And I think hope was, we don't need to go into all of this with 2 or 3 minutes left, but I think hope was a big part of what I felt like I was lacking about my future, right? And so maybe that wasn't pure rock bottom maybe there is no objective metric here, but to feel like you lack in hope for the future is disheartening at best. And so to acknowledge that that's where I was, and like this is one of the things I'm most proud of and one of the hardest things to say out loud, because it does feel, kind of like, look at me. But to feel that way and to say like, I have to make change, and it's going to take time, and that involves therapy and doing really hard things and doing hard activities and failing miserably. And I don't know if the other shoe is yet to drop. I'm not even sure, right? But I think it's like you just have to kind of keep stacking those things on top of each other And that's where that momentum gets built, right? And so I think like, yeah, like maybe we do have to all go through that to some extent, but it doesn't, to your point, it's not like you're not going to become destitute and a failure overnight. I believe that we're all very, some would say resilient. I think Nassim Taleb would say anti-fragile is his word. But I mean, I believe that we are resilient. And I think we maybe fear that idea that like things are going to go wrong if we make this choice. But I think that's the theme of this whole conversation is you take a step, you learn, maybe that's a bad decision, and you pivot and you build and you change again, right? Because that's who we are as human beings. And so I think it's all just comfort in the discomfort.
Beautiful. I wrote down episode number 2. We're going to talk about hope. We're going to dive deeper into hope. So
I love
come back in a couple of months. Michael and I are going to talk about hope, and I'm going to just let you go off on that and then figure out how to work myself into it. But
yeah.
Before we wrap up, and I'm not going to do this every time you come on, but I do like part of my goal with Aligned Life and this platform is to bring attention to great people who are doing great work. And one of the really cool things about the work that you and I love to do with the life planning, tying in the finances, is how you want to help people is, helping them navigate the journey that you went on yourself. So it's not very many financial advisors want to do this work. We have a growing number, but we're still really small. But the really cool thing about, I think, both of us is for the right people, we become the right guide because we've traveled that path before. And what we're not going to do is have you travel our path, but we can help guide you to travel your own path because we've been there. We can be empathetic. We can understand. We can sit there with you because we've been there before in our own version and ultimately help you figure out your truth. And then since we're number guys, money touches everything, we can intertwine the money in so you can afford the sabbatical or start the business or whatever it might be once you know that's what it really is. So with that introduction, real quick, tell everybody about the work you're doing at Wonderland. I'll link to it, everything. But part of this on the other side of the sabbatical was you starting your own firm to do the work that you felt called to do. So what is the work you feel called to do? And tell us about Wonderland.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a practice based on everything you just said. And so, I think one of my core values is creativity. And I think it's finding creative ways to help people find permission, right? And so that this gets back to the conversation of what is it that I was showing people in spreadsheets before versus what do I feel like I get to do now? And so I'd say my core demographic of clients is definitely it skews more millennial than it does retirees these days. And it is really trying to help those people have conversations about, hey, I'm 10 years into my career in tech, right? And we're thinking about combining our finances, starting a family, buying a house. There's all these huge life events. There's this huge spike of life that's happening. And there's so much great work to do around, A, do you feel the permission to do this? Do you feel excitement about it? What scares you? And that's just, I think, a very fun conversation to work through with clients because I think people maybe are, and this is me projecting a little bit, but I think people have gone through the first phase of life and are now poking their head up and saying, what comes next? And I think I want to do things a little differently than my parents' generation did. And so maybe it's not as traditional, right? And so I think it's, how can I help? I think the tagline I have on LinkedIn that I think is a little bit corny that I come back to, but is how do I find extraordinary meaning in ordinary lives, right? The reality is that none of us are going to be the next Tim Cook. Like we aren't all destined for worldwide glory. And so how do we find extraordinary meaning in this little container that is our unique life? And a job well done to me is you feel aligned and excited about how your finances can support like living that best life.
Beautiful. What's the website I need to link to? I know it, but tell everybody just in case they're listening
yeah, you
to
can. There's two places to find me. One is at my professional website, so that's just wonderlandfp.com. And then I do write. I try to write every other week on Substack, and that's just The Art of Wandering.
I'll link to those to make it easier. So head to the show notes, head to the blog post. That'll all be there. But Michael, I just want to thank you for taking the time to join me. I do want to have you back more often and have these conversations. I've got my rotating group of friends where we have awesome conversations that sometimes it's good to record.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to talking about hope or whatever comes up next time. So thanks for gracing us with your presence and sharing your story of your sabbatical, which I hope inspires some people to at least explore it. And whether it's a sabbatical or something else, just take that step in that direction that feels right, because I think on the other side of that is a lot of good things.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, man. We'll see you here in a couple months again on the podcast.
Sounds good.